The air in the Ituri rainforest was thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves. A relentless, humid heat clung to everything, broken only by the chatter of distant monkeys and the piercing calls of exotic birds. Elias, a man whose skin was weathered by years of sun and rain, pushed a machete through a tangle of vines, his movements weary but practiced. He ran a small, unofficial wildlife sanctuary in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a place where animals with nowhere else to go found a temporary home. His work was his life, and lately it had been a series of heartbreaks. That morning, a local guide had brought him a devastating report. A lioness, a magnificent creature Elias had tracked for months, had been killed by poachers. The guide had found something else too, a cub, barely a few weeks old, crying pitifully in a thicket. When Elias arrived, the sight was a punch to the gut. The tiny lion cub was shivering, its small body emaciated and covered in flies. He gently scooped it up, the cub's frantic mewling a sound of pure terror and loss. He knew the odds were against him, but he couldn't leave it. Back at his small compound, he prepared a makeshift enclosure. It was a rustic place, wooden fences, corrugated iron roofs, and a single unreliable generator. The compound's most formidable resident was Coco, a magnificent western lowland gorilla. Coco had been rescued as a baby after her mother was killed and had been raised by Elias. She was now a full-grown female, powerful and intelligent, residing in a large forested area within the compound. Elias often spoke to her, a one-sided conversation of a man pouring out his frustrations and fears to a silent, understanding listener. As he settled the cub, now wrapped in a worn blanket, he felt Coco's gaze on him from across the compound. Her large, dark eyes seemed to hold a question, a gentle curiosity that was both comforting and unsettling. This new responsibility, on top of everything else, felt like a heavy weight. He just hoped he was strong enough to carry it. Thank you for watching the first part of this story. If you're enjoying it, please consider subscribing to our channel for more content like this. Remember, this is a fictional story created for entertainment. Days turned into a grueling, sleepless blur. The cub, which Elias had named Leo, was failing. He refused the milk substitute, his breathing was shallow, and his spirit seemed to be fading with each passing hour. Elias's frustration mounted. He knew the cub needed its mother's warmth and comfort, something he, as a human, could never truly provide. He called his friend Adina, a veterinarian who lived in a nearby town. Elias, a cub this young needs round-the-clock care and the specific nutrients of its mother's milk, she said over a crackling phone line. You're doing everything you can, but the forest is a cruel place. Elias hung up, the words hanging heavy in the humid air. He walked to the edge of Coco's enclosure. The gorilla was a study in stillness, a massive shadow beneath the canopy of trees. He watched as she expertly used a stick to poke around for grubs, her movements deliberate and calm. She had been observing him for days, watching him fret over the tiny cub. He saw her eyes flicker towards Leo's enclosure, a distant, almost maternal flicker. It was a strange thought, but it gave him a sliver of hope. That night, the weather turned. A storm, a violent beast of wind and rain, descended upon the rainforest. The generator, an old, temperamental machine, sputtered and died, plunging the compound into complete darkness. The wind howled like 1,000 demons, and Elias fought to keep the cub warm, wrapping him in every blanket he could find. But the sound that truly chilled him came from the edge of the forest, the distant, blood-curdling baying of African wild dogs. Elias knew they were territorial and relentless hunters. He gripped a heavy wrench, his heart pounding, his fear for the vulnerable cub a cold knot in his stomach. He was alone, in the dark, with the predator's cries growing ever closer. The storm was a cacophony of sound, masking the approaching danger. Elias heard a rustle near the perimeter, followed by a low growl. The wild dogs were close. Panic surged through him. He couldn't fight a pack of them. His focus shifted to the cub, who was shaking violently, not from the cold, but from the terrifying sounds of the predators. In a moment of desperation, his eyes fell upon Coco's enclosure. Her section of the compound was the most secure, and her presence was a deterrent in itself. Acting on pure instinct, he grabbed the cub's blanket and bolted for Coco's fence, a section that was reinforced and sturdy. He reached the fence and fumbled with the latch, his hands trembling. He placed the bundled-up cub on the ground, just inside the enclosure, right in the center of Coco's large open area. The howls were deafening now, just on the other side of the compound fence. Ildeus was terrified. He was about to call Coco's name when he saw her. The gorilla, a silent and imposing figure in the darkness, moved with surprising speed. She didn't approach the cub with aggression. Instead, she sat down next to the small bundle. With one enormous hand, she gently pulled the cub closer, shielding its small body with her own. She then let out a low, guttural huff, a deep, resonating sound that was part warning, part challenge. It wasn't a roar, but it was a sound of immense power and authority. The howls of the wild dogs ceased abruptly. All that could be heard was the pounding rain and the gentle breath of the giant gorilla, standing guard over a tiny, helpless lion cub. If this story has captivated you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more compelling stories. Remember, this is a work of fiction, crafted for your enjoyment. The morning light, pale and watery, revealed a scene Elias could barely believe. The storm had passed, leaving the forest a dripping, shimmering landscape. The wild dogs were gone, their footprints a testament to their presence. Coco was still sitting guard. Leo, the little cub, was curled up right against her massive leg, his small head resting on her foot. When he stirred, Coco would gently nudge him, making a series of soft, rumbling sounds that seemed to soothe him. Elias approached cautiously, unsure of how the gorilla would react. He brought a bowl of milk, which he placed a few feet from them. Coco, still protective, eyed him suspiciously, but did not move. It was then that Elias saw it. The cub, feeling a sudden surge of strength, pushed himself up and wobbled towards the bowl. He drank, slow and steady, with a new purpose. The word spread quickly. Adina, the vet, came to see it for herself. She watched, her expression a mix of disbelief and awe. "I've read about this, but I've never seen it," she whispered. "In some rare cases, animals in captivity or with human interaction can form surrogate bonds, especially across species. The emotional trauma from her own past, combined with his vulnerability, she sees him as one of her own." The local villagers, who often helped Elias with supplies and maintenance, came to visit. They brought food for the animals and helped Elias repair the generator and reinforce the fence. The compound, which had felt so isolated and vulnerable, now felt like a community, united by a shared sense of wonder and hope. They were not just protecting a gorilla and a cub, they were protecting an extraordinary bond, a symbol of life's resilience in the face of immense loss. Weeks turned into a month. Leo, once a frail, dying cub, was now a boisterous, playful ball of fluff. He would stalk Coco's fingers, pouncing on them with tiny, clumsy paws. The gorilla would play along, moving her hand slowly, allowing the cub to win. The sight of the massive, powerful gorilla and the tiny, courageous lion cub was a constant source of wonder. But as Leo grew, Elias knew this couldn't last. The cub was a lion, a predator, and his instincts would soon take over. He needed to be with other lions to learn how to be the king he was born to be. The day to move Leo to a larger, more suitable reserve was a heavy one. Elias, Adina, and a small team worked with a heavy heart. Coco watched the entire process from her perch, her expression unreadable. As they carefully placed Leo in a transport cage, the cub let out a distressed whimper. Coco responded immediately, a series of mournful, low hoots that echoed through the trees. It was a goodbye, a farewell between two souls who had found each other in the darkest of times. Elias placed a hand on Coco's shoulder, trying to convey his gratitude and sorrow. The gorilla met his gaze, her large eyes filled with a deep, silent understanding. As the transport truck drove away, taking Leo to his new home and a new future, Elias felt a profound sense of closure. The journey had been difficult, filled with fear and uncertainty, but it had also been a testament to the power of compassion and the extraordinary capacity for connection that exists in the world, even in the most unlikely of pairings. He walked back to Coco's enclosure. The gorilla was sitting alone, but her posture was one of quiet dignity, a guardian who had fulfilled her duty. Elias looked at the empty space where Leo had once slept, and then at Coco, his friend and the silent hero of their story. The forest was still a harsh and unforgiving place, but he knew now that with a little kindness, even the most impossible bonds could be forged. And that true strength wasn't just in survival, but in the choice to protect those who need you most.